Hello, and welcome to the HCCTV's Student Lounge. This is a show done by HCC students for HCC students to give their opinions on news, entertainment, and what is happening in your school. My name is Josh. Hello, Carolina. How are you today?
Hey Josh, it's good to have a different face. We're missing Kaya, but I know you're going to do it great. Now, we're also joined today by Francisco, Andres, Chaz, and Eric. And we will also have a very special guest, Dr. Joseph Varon, who is the Chief of Intensive Care and COVID 19 at the United Memorial Medical Center. But first, let's move into our top three news of the week. So, in a major step toward returning to pre pandemic life, the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention is mask wearing guidance for fully vaccinated people past Thursday, May 13. This is allowing people to stop wearing the mask outdoors, in crowds, and in most indoor settings. Now, remember, people who are considered fully vaccinated are 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks after their second dose in a two-dose series, such as the Pfizer or Moderna, or the 2 weeks after the single dose vaccine, such as Johnson's and Johnson's Janssen vaccine. If you don't meet those requirements, regardless of your age, you are not fully vaccinated. So you still have to keep all the precautions until you're fully vaccinated. Now, also remember HCC nursing students participated in giving out COVID 19 vaccines. This happened this past March, and the HCC Chancellor, Dr. Cesar Maldonado, and HCC Coleman College students, and also the instructors joined United Memorial Medical Center employees in administering vaccines to combat the COVID 19. Now, recently, Houston Community College's Acres Homes and Central campuses will be COVID 19 vaccination sites on Wednesday, May 19th through Saturday, May 22nd. And this will happen from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The vaccines are administered by the Texas National Guard at no cost to the public. And this is in partnership with the Texas Department of Emergency Management. Now, let's begin our first topic, which makes way to a great discussion. So, how was your experience with COVID 19 vaccinations? Let's start with Josh.
So, I recently got my second vaccination shot about 2 weeks ago. I got the Moderna shot, and I had an opportunity to get the shots a couple months ago before they were readily available. But I decided not to do it then because I know that there are people who were more in need of it than I did. So I waited a few months until it became more readily available and I finally got it. But for me personally, after I got my second shot, I did not feel well at all. I was very sore, very weak, massive headaches, a lot of issues. But the problem only lasted a day. Like I woke up the very next morning, I was completely fine. Compare that to the first shot that I got, I felt almost nothing, just perfectly fine. So I think it kind of affects people in different ways, but I'm sure we'll hear about that more when everyone else discuss.
That's absolutely right. So in my case, I got the second dose of the Pfizer, and I didn't feel anything when I took the vaccines. But I think that's because I don't know. This could be all speculations. But in my case, I decided to take this vaccination because I had COVID 19 the past February, and I took it pretty bad. I was on bed for 2 weeks. I couldn't go to work, and after the my after I was negative for COVID, I was still feeling very weak. So that's one of the questions we're gonna ask later on in the interview because I was usually exercising, constantly going running, and after that, my routine went all back. Like if I wasn't training at all my whole life. So it was pretty bad. So that's the reason I decided to take my vaccine. And also because my mom was staying with me and she took the vaccine a lot before than me. So I just wanted to take care of her. And that's the reason I got my vaccination.
Speaking of training, I pretty much hadn't gone to the gym pretty much the entire time that the pandemic has started, just because I feel like people are already not very cleanly at public gyms. And then with the virus going around, I was like, no, I am not going to die over this. I had my vaccine a couple of weeks ago, and on the first shot, I also had the Pfizer. I was like, oh, I have like a little sore, it's whatever. But I don't know what it was. The second shot, the moment it was in, I was like, oh, I can feel it in my veins. I was like, oh, I feel it. That's so weird. And then the next day, I was not feeling great. I was mostly just like really hot and I had a sore throat, which is why I wasn't on the show that Friday. Uh, but I pretty much just like Josh said, I like passed out, and the next morning I was like, oh, cool, I'm perfectly fine now. So it was really interesting. And actually today, I've been, I guess I can't count as fully vaccinated now because I think it's been 2 weeks since my second dose. So it's been interesting. It's been certainly different than most vaccines you take, you know?
Chaz, I also had a pretty similar experience to Josh. So I had my first vaccine, and it felt like I didn't have any side effects at all. So I kind of was wondering, like, oh, did it work? did it miss maybe? And then the second time, I had the same doctor, and yeah, it was pretty bad. I was like sore all over, and like I could like I couldn't sit still for very long because my body would just like tense up. But yeah, I just took a lot of took some Tylenol and then just took it easy, and it went away pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm glad the second time at least I could feel things going on, unlike the first time.
So I took the Johnson and Johnson vaccine that everyone is afraid of. I took it about 5 weeks ago, and I haven't felt any effects at all. So I feel pretty good. I think people should try to take it anyway, even though we're getting a lot of bad press about it. Because when I look at it, the vaccine and the virus is very similar to the swine flu, the bird flu, and even the Ebola virus. Throughout history, mankind has experienced a lot of viruses that have hurt them dramatically. And it's important that we don't let this COVID-19 hurt us anymore. So please do not be afraid of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I'm fine, I'm so strong and healthy. So I encourage you to all take it.
It was very easy. I just called in and they gave me an appointment in 2 days. It was very easy to have the appointment. So I already had the first shot, so I'm waiting for the second shot this Saturday. So in the first shot, I didn't have any symptom. It was very good. So I'm just waiting for the second shot.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear about. I also felt like the first shot, it gave me like it sore on my arm and stuff like that. But yeah, it's so different from person to person, and I do feel like we're very privileged. Back home in Colombia, where I'm from, vaccination is still very late, and that's something that really concerns me. So I'm really thankful that we have this opportunity. It's just my personal opinion. Now that we've heard from our crew, let's move into our week's guest. So who do you have for today, Josh?
Today's a very special day because we are joined by Dr. Joseph Varon. He's the Chief of Intensive Care at the United Memorial Medical Center's COVID-19 unit. Dr. Varon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invitation.
So first thing I want to ask is, when the pandemic started maybe a year and a couple months ago or so, what did the day-to-day life look like for you, from beginning to everything being shut down to having people taking up every hospital bed to just nowadays? What's it like now that the vaccine's been rolled out?
Well, the first few months were basically hell. What do I mean by hell? I was working about 16 to 20 hours every single day. We were having patients come in, come out. The first few months were terrible. Just to give you an example, in June and July of last year, I signed the most amount of death certificates of my entire career. Even if you put all my career as an intensive care doctor, we had more people die. And, we were really pretty good. I mean, actually, UMMC had the best records as far as nationwide, as far as mortality, but it was bad. It was really bad. People were dying. My nurses were crying in the middle of the day because, they would see a patient die, and 2 minutes later, you have somebody else that was getting in trouble. So when the vaccine starts rolling out, and we started to see that the number of patients started coming down, imagine going from 88 patients at some point in time that I was running to right now I have, I think, 13. I mean, how relieved you can feel. Yes, I still work a lot of hours. Yes, we still have people that are coming very, very sick. But the one thing that I can tell you is that I see the light at the end of the tunnel, which during 2020, I could not see.
That's great to hear. And, we were introduced to you from our colleague Andres before, and I'd like to pass the torch over to him and let him ask you a question or two that he had.
Okay, doctor, I just want to know the difference between the different vaccine, the Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson and Johnson?
That's a question that a lot of people ask me. And the best answer for that is the best vaccine is a vaccine that you can get. Simple as that. It doesn't matter which vaccine it is, but you have to get whatever is the best vaccine you can get.
I feel that's a very honest answer. Yeah. And I just want to know, how do you think the US compared to other nations in getting the vaccine?
Well, at the beginning, we were not doing that well. If you compare us with other countries, for example, Israel, where we were able to get more than 80% of vaccination in a very rapid time. And the fact is that they really won the war against COVID. I think we didn't do that well. And when you look at the state, particularly, I mean, Texas had a lot of issues getting it going. Just to give you an idea, 40% of my nurses that work in my COVID unit refuse to get the vaccine. And they do so not because it's a new vaccine, mostly because of cultural issues. And you guys are very sensitive to cultural issues, but you are well aware of what those concerns are. In the Hispanic population, the concern that you are going to remain or become sterile because they vaccinate you. In the African American population, because of the potentials of experiments and doing those things. But the fact is that this vaccine is safe. And I know that you have been hearing a lot of things, but it's most of what you hear is you hear it through social media. So I was hearing that Eric got the Johnson & Johnson. That's actually great. You know how Johnson & Johnson, they say that, well, in the United States, there were 6 cases of a very weird illness, which is a clot that you get in the frontal vein of the brain, extremely rare, okay? And that one person died. Well, guess what? Your chances of dying from going to a gender revealing party are much higher than from getting the vaccine. Every year when people want to know whether you have a boy or a girl, that thing pops. Well, there is always a case in which that thing pops into the eye of somebody or into the head of somebody, and they fall and they die. Well, you have much higher chances of dying. Actually, it's 12 people a year that die from that in this country, versus the very weird clot disorder that is being discussed regarding the Johnson & Johnson. So in response to your question, Andres and Carolina, the best vaccine is the one that you can get. Yes, there are a few differences between both of them, but most of them have one thing in common. And that one thing in common is that they protect you from developing the bad COVID that kills you. None of the vaccines are going to protect you 100%. Indeed, you may actually get COVID, but it's going to be a COVID that you either don't know that you have it, or is so mild that it doesn't get you in trouble. The whole point is to prevent you from getting into the intensive care unit.
Wow, I've never heard that. Like, I've heard of the, it's the percentage that you won't get it, but to protect you from dying, that's the thing that most people have to think about. And you knew I was going to ask you about the challenges of administering the vaccine. For example, these speculations, because I've heard so many speculations. What do you think of people saying that they don't get it because it hasn't been tested enough? Vaccines take long.
I guess you have a very, there are 2 ways to respond to that one. Number one, it's not true because it's been, this is technology that has evolved over 4 decades. It's not something that was made overnight. That's number one. But number 2, think about it. We're in the middle of the largest human experiment in the history of medicine. So if anybody tells you it hasn't been tested enough, there are 100 million people that have received the vaccine. I think that's testing it quite enough, and you know where we stand. Now, when people tell me, well, what about the effects that we're going to have at 5 years? And I'm going to be honest, I don't know if you're going to grow a third eye or you're going to grow a tail or stuff like that. But what I do know is that if you get COVID now, you can die. And when you put that balance where you have, I get COVID now and I can die, or they give me a vaccine that seems to be fairly reasonable, that can diminish those chances, then you go for the vaccine.
I know that India, that is a big country, they have a very big problem with the COVID-19. So actually, I know that you are planning to go there and have a trip to help them. Can you tell us about that trip?
Yes. So United Memorial Medical Center, when we found out that India was getting in trouble, we decided to find a way to help. First thing we did is we sent 5,000 oxygen tanks. Then we sent 800 oxygen concentrators and a lot of medications. But clearly that doesn't even put a dent on what's going on in India. So what we have done is we have literally rented a ship that is a hospital. It has 200 beds, 16 ICU beds, 4 operating rooms, and we're going to locate it in the east coast of India because, as you remember, everything that's going on is mostly on the west coast. So slowly it's going on. So I'm going to bring with me a lot of my colleagues, international medical students that volunteer, nurses, a lot of people that are willing to come and help. It's a risky operation, but somebody has to come and help. And again, I know that that's probably not going to fix the problem in the country, but my goal would be that somebody replicates what we're going to be doing.
Yes, doctor. So a couple other questions that I had is, so we've seen the age requirement to get vaccines steadily lower over time. I believe now it's 16 is the age in Texas, at least. When do you think COVID vaccines will be available to anyone? Are we going to start administering them to newborns like how we do other vaccines?
Well, for me to answer that question, you need to understand a little bit about the newborns and stuff like that. You remember that COVID usually kills you by 2 mechanisms. Mechanism number 1 is inflammation. Mechanism number 2 is excessive clotting. COVID has these little spikes. For the spike to be able to enter your body, to enter your system, to enter your cells, it requires a little receptor that kind of attaches it. It looks like a V. So the spike comes in. Well, guess what? Babies, especially in the first 2 years of age, that receptor is not developed. So babies may have the virus, but it doesn't get into their cells. And it is your cell, the one that produces all that inflammation and gets you in trouble. So I do believe that there will be vaccination in kids. I do believe that the vaccination in kids probably will start at age 2 and follow that based on what I just told you about those little receptors. And I would say that by the end of this year, you're probably going to have all ages vaccinated. Now, this vaccine may not be the first one nor the last one that you get. I mean, you may need to get additional vaccines because, as you know, we're having a lot of new strains and new variants, like they're called, and the vaccine probably will have to be modified on a yearly or bi-yearly basis to cover those different strains.
Yeah, that actually leads into a follow-up question I had is you mentioned that we might have a booster shot down the road, potential third, it might become a yearly thing. What do you think the likelihood of that will be? Or do you think there will be even more pushback like, oh, I already got my first 2 vaccines. Why should I have to get this every year now? I thought that should cure it.
Well, I think that the likelihood is 100%. And very few times in my life I say that, that you will get it. And more importantly, I believe that we will have a lot of resistance. People will let their guard down. And that's exactly what happened to India. You know, they dropped their guard and look at where they are today. So the fact that we have a vaccine, the fact that we are now maskless, the fact that we're doing these things by no means should tell you that COVID is gone. COVID is still here. COVID is still going to be killing people, but people are getting used to it. They have what I call the COVID fatigue syndrome. You know, you listen to the news, you hear COVID. You call your friends, you talk about COVID. This COVID, COVID, COVID. So we're tired of COVID. So what's the easiest way? Just look the other way.
Well, now that you talk about that, yeah, I was going to ask you about the post-COVID recovery. So in my case, and I've heard about it from so many people, after getting COVID, it's really hard to get back to exercise, to feeling the same, you know, like the energy and stuff like that. And some people are waking up congested after weeks. So what do you think, what tips do you give us, or what should we do? Is that going to, and like, that's going to happen forever, or how can we put an end to that? I don't know.
Well, there are several theories as to what's going on. What we know is that about 50% of people that have COVID will develop what is called as a post-COVID syndrome. You know, people feeling tired, not having headaches. I mean, everybody has something different. The one thing that we have seen that is very similar to that is the deficit or deficiency in vitamin C. If you look at vitamin C deficiency and post-COVID syndrome, they look very similar. So one of the things that we're doing is administering our patients really very large quantities of vitamin C. I'm talking about, 2-3 grams a couple of times a day. And actually, a lot of my patients are saying that they are feeling better. We also have a couple of other things that we're using. One of them is a anti-parasite medication that is called ivermectin. I'm sure you've heard about all the, there's been a lot of controversy as to whether it should be used or not, but ivermectin seems to have some effect on the post-COVID symptoms. So we have a lot of things that are going on. We personally are working right now on 17 different protocols related to COVID as new medications are coming out. So the chances are that, COVID is going to become one of those, oh, he has the flu, let's give him some Tamiflu or stuff like that. But we're not there yet. And we still are going to have to get vaccinated like you get vaccinated for the flu once a year.
And what do you suggest if someone has a routine of exercising, even a sports person? I was not into sports that professionally, but I used to run a lot and my performance has decreased enormously. So what do you suggest for exercising?
That you start again and you build up your capacity as much as you can. You don't stop. You continue to do it. Yes, at the beginning, in your case, you may walk around, then maybe you will start jogging slowly. Maybe then you will jog much faster. So those are things that need to be done. One of the biggest issues that I see is people feel tired and they say, okay, I'm going to stay home. No. You need to push yourself. You have to push yourself. And patients do well. With time, people are going to get better. And I'm telling you, deficit in or lack of vitamins, that's important. Those are things that people need to consider. And simple interventions like having a hell of a lot of vitamin C make a difference.
Coming into that, what do you think, are the best ways for people to be getting vitamin C, especially if they're, feeling it afterwards? Like, what are the easiest ways that aren't just going to get, injections and stuff? Because it obviously needs to be saved for people who are who need it right now and stuff.
Yeah, well, we can do the infusions IV. That's not an issue. But, the safest and easiest way to do it is to go to the pharmacy and just buy vitamin C. People say, well, what about just eating a lot of lemon and orange juice and stuff like that? It's not enough in those circumstances. So in addition to you having your orange juice 3-4 times a day or whatever it is, what you enjoy, my recommendation is that you take a minimum of 2 grams twice a day. And don't worry, you are not going to develop kidney stones. You are not going to, whatever your body doesn't need, you're just going to pee it out. Simple as that. It's coming right out from what it is.
Yep. And one of the main things is, even if you're drinking that much orange juice, that comes with a lot of sugar and stuff.
Absolutely. That's why you have the greatest advantage of just taking the capsule. And they are very easy to digest. They don't give you heartburn or stuff like that.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Doctor, I have a question. So after I get my vaccine, can I donate blood or plasma?
Absolutely. You can donate blood. I suggest you do not donate plasma because plasma is completely worthless. There is no evidence that plasma makes a difference in people with COVID. I know a lot of people like to donate plasma, but it doesn't work. So you can donate as much blood as you can. You can receive the vaccine as well if you have any chronic medical condition. A lot of people ask me, hey, I have diabetes. Can I get the vaccine? The answer is yes. No, doesn't matter what you have. Even if you, God forbid, you have some kind of cancer, you should get the vaccine. Even if you feel like Chaz felt, yes, you're going to feel like hell for a couple of days, but I'd rather feel bad for a couple of days than die.
So there's a rumor going around that the vaccine only lasts about 6 months. Is that true or false?
Well, let me put it this way, and follow me on this one, Eric. It's fairly straightforward. We know that the vaccines last 6 months. How do we know? Because we've been giving it for 6 months. But we don't know if it's going to last 9 or if it's going to last 12 because we don't have that extensive follow-up. We have not been able to follow up enough number of people with antibodies and stuff like that. That's being done as we speak. But the fact is that it is very likely that the vaccine will last probably between 9 and 12 months or even more. We just don't know. So those rumors are just false, especially when you hear a company saying, well, we're going to have to revaccinate. Of course they want to revaccinate because they have to produce more vaccines. It's a business. Let's wait for the scientific studies to tell us exactly what is that time frame. We know that if you have COVID There are studies in South Korea that show that by the end of 3 months, you don't have any more antibodies. So you can get it again. And actually, we have a patient that had 3 different times. But as far as vaccination goes, we know that 6 months you are protected, but we don't know if 9 or 12 because we just don't have those studies.
Doctor, I had a quick question. So you mentioned earlier in the interview about how there's hesitancy to get the vaccine. You mentioned the Tuskegee syphilis test, which is why some African Americans were hesitant to do it. What advice could you give to people who are hesitant to get the vaccine, and what would you do to encourage them to get it?
The only way that which you can convince people is, first of all, is educate. Educate, educate, educate. Show them the science. And more importantly, now show them the actual data that we have. The number of cases of COVID are plummeting. They're going down. And they're going down because of the vaccine. When a few months ago, you would talk to somebody and somebody would tell you that they had a family member that died of COVID. That's going away. So I think that that's the best way to convince. And I do respect, the Latino population, the African American population, those cultural beliefs that I'm telling you, when I was in Mexico as a kid, I remember my grandmother, when they were these giant vaccination campaigns, she would tell my mom, under no circumstance you let them give you the vaccine because they're trying to sterilize him or they're trying to do stuff like that. I remember that vividly. And we would only go to our pediatrician to get the thing. So these are true cultural things. I mean, by no means problems that occurred in the past, and we cannot forget about them. But I think that showing what's going on, talking science with people in a way that can be understood at the different cultural levels, I think that can make a difference.
No, that's great to hear, Doctor. I'll be sure to share this with other people as well. But now that I just checked the time and it looks like my third eye is growing in, my tail's starting to grow out. And I think it's about time we move on with the entertainment. I would like to thank you for your time today. Thank you so much for informing everyone, and we'll sure be in contact with you in the future.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. And please, if you are not vaccinated, get your vaccine.
It was fascinating hearing about this special topic with you, Dr. Joseph. And thank you so much for your time. Now, as you know, we'll cover things that are entertaining. So what shows are out that you want to talk to us about, guys?
So there's a movie I like called Invasion. It's about an alien virus that comes to Earth, and it basically infects people by getting into their immune systems. So what happens is they go to sleep, and the virus will take over, and it either kills them or controls their mind. It's a pretty intense movie. It stars Nicole Kidman. It came out in 2006 or 2007. But I liked it a lot because it had a whole new meaning to the term, don't go to sleep. But on other notes, the film world now is having some problems. We need to make sure that everyone is vaccinated. So it's important that everyone, whether you're behind the camera or in front of the camera, gets vaccinated. Because the big fear is that a film production can be shut down during the middle of filming, and no one wants that. So I do encourage people in the film industry to definitely get vaccinated.
That's great to hear, Eric. I'm not too averse on the film industry and the practice behind it, so it's nice to know that they're trying to keep everything safe and eventually we'll move back to a sense of normalcy. But with that being said, I think it's time to wrap up for the week. I would like to thank everyone for watching. Make sure to tune in to another episode of the Student Lounge, and I'm sure Kyle will be back next week to resume hosting duties.
Also, don't forget to send us your opinion and also send us more topics that you would like to discuss. Thank you, Josh, for covering. Kyle, you did an excellent job. I like doing it with you. We'll see you next time on the Student Lounge.